The door shut behind me with a click that didn't sound temporary. No one waved. No one promised they'd be back. Just the cold scent of bleach and the hum of flickering lights above me. They said it was for my safety, but I could taste the betrayal on my tongue, bitter and dry. I knew in that moment, this wasn't about care, it was about control. And if they thought I'd sit quietly and let them erase me, they chose the wrong woman. Which city in the world are you listening from? If this story touches you, don't forget to subscribe. My name is Marietta Lourdes Bishop. I'm 74 years old. I used to teach mute music piano, mostly at a small middle school, tucked away in the hills of Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Retired now, of course, but sometimes when the wind rattles the porch and I close my eyes, I still hear the soft stumble of children learning Chopin. The house I lived in, it wasn't big, but every corner held a memory. My late husband, Ernest, built the fireplace stone by stone. We planted rosemary and mint by the kitchen window. He used to call it our little castle, even though the roof leaked every spring. When he passed 10 years ago, I stayed. Not because I was stubborn, though maybe I am, but because I knew how to live alone. Angela, my daughter, never quite understood that. She's sharp, successful, and always in a rush. Lives in Charlotte with her husband Brendan, who talks like he's always on a stage. They visit on holidays, bring wine I didn't ask for, and make comments like, "Mom, this place could really use an update." But I didn't need granite countertops. I needed space to breathe. The only one who really sees me is Leo, my grandson. He's 19 now. Tall like his grandfather, but with my eyes. He comes up every other weekend, helps me stack wood, and asks questions no one else bothers to ask. Like, "Grandma, do you ever get lonely out here?" I told him the truth. Only when people treat me like I should be. That was before the fall. Just one misplaced step on the garden path. A twisted ankle, barely worth mentioning. But Angela saw her opening, and I didn't realize until too late. She'd already made plans without me. They told me it would just be a short stay, a place to recover, to rest. The sign outside read, "Carolina Pines Extended Living." Sounded gentle enough, but the moment that heavy door clicked behind me, something inside me shifted. The room they gave me was clean. Too clean. Bleach clung to the air like a warning. The window barely opened, and when it did, it only gave me the sound of someone moaning down the hall, and the soft whir of electric beds rising and falling. My purse was gone. Angela said she took it for safekeeping, just until you're back on your feet. My phone replaced with a simple model preloaded with 2 numbers, hers and Brendan's. I asked for my journal. They said it wasn't allowed. Too personal, too emotional. Even my glasses were swapped for a cheaper pair, easier to track if lost. The first night I sat on the edge of the plastic-covered mattress, listening to someone cry 3 doors down. A nurse offered me tea. It tasted like dust and forgetfulness. Days passed, no return date, no talk of going home. Angela's calls came every other day, short, chipper, rehearsed. "How are they treating you, Mom? You're doing great. We're proud of you." No mention of my house, no plan for my return. Then one morning, I overheard 2 nurses whispering near the med cart. One said her daughter's already signed the POA last week. The other replied, "She's lucky she still knows her name. Makes everything easier." I pressed my hand against the window, watching a cardinal land on the feeder outside. Its wings were red fire in the grayness. And I whispered to no one, "I'm not gone yet." The 3rd week, they scheduled me for a cognitive evaluation. No warning, just a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach the eyes. The woman asking the questions spoke in a voice like you would to a stubborn child. "What year is it, Marietta? Can you name 3 animals that start with C?" I answered everything slowly, clearly making sure not to sound too sharp. That would raise concern. Too dull. That would be worse. Afterward, I asked the nurse assigned to my floor, the only one who ever met my eyes. Her name was Celeste. Maybe 26, still green but kind. "Why are they testing me like this?" I asked. She hesitated, then glanced down the hallway, lowered her voice. Some families push for evaluations to help get conservatorship faster. Once it's filed, they can sell the house access accounts. It happens more than you'd think. My stomach dropped, not fear, clarity, like puzzle pieces snapping into place. That night I sat at the communal TV room, surrounded by strangers, slumped in vinyl recliners. The air smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Wheelchairs creaked. Someone coughed without covering their mouth. I stared at the screen, but I wasn't watching. I was memorizing names, listening to staff patterns, which nurses worked, which shifts, which ones didn't check the side doors, where they kept the master keys. The next day, I started writing notes in my mind, paragraphs I couldn't put on paper, timelines I couldn't save on a phone. I recited them silently, like old hymns. Angela took my bag on day 1. Brendan signed something on day 15. Celeste warned me, day 21. No one noticed. No one suspected. They thought I was fading. But I was writing with memory, as my pen and fury as my ink. They gave me 30 minutes with Leo, supervised. A nurse sat just outside the glass door pretending not to listen. He looked older since I last saw him, not in age but in weight, like life had pressed a hand on his shoulders. "Hi, Grandma," he said softly. I smiled, held his hand. We talked about nothing for 10 minutes: college, the weather, a funny show. Then I slipped a folded note into his palm. Small, creased, just 6 a word. "Send this to Mr. Halberd, urgent." Leo blinked, then nodded once. 2 days later, I got a call through the facility's main line. Mr. Halberd, my lawyer of 30 years. His voice was sharp as ever. "Marietta," he said, "I'm glad you reached out. Brendan filed a petition to transfer the deed last week, claims you're incapacitated." My blood ran cold. "But he's wrong," I said. "Of course he is. And your name is still on every document." He underestimated the paperwork. "What can we do? I've already filed a freeze. Nothing moves until you sign off. And you, my dear, are not signing anything." That night, Angela called. First time in weeks. Her voice wasn't sweet this time. It cracked like glass. "Mom, what are you doing?" she snapped. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No," I replied. "You did that when you made choices for a woman who still makes her own tea and remembers every damn birthday." She went quiet, then mumbled, "We were just trying to help by stealing my home." "It's not stealing. Dad left it too." "I'm not dead, Angela." I hung up. My hand trembled, but not from fear, from something older, stronger. Pride. I waited until the 3rd Thursday in October, not because it meant anything, but because it gave me just enough time to set every piece in motion. With Halberd's help, I signed the final papers, every asset, the house, the annuity, the safe deposit box transferred into a trust. 2 beneficiaries, Leo and the Women's Shelter of Boone County. Angela and Brendan removed. No appeals, no explanations. That same day I wrote my daughter a letter, not out of anger, out of finality. "You mistook quiet for weakness. You mistook love for obedience. I gave you years of grace. Now I'm giving you distance." I left it unsigned. Some endings don't need names. That night I folded my clothes into a tote bag, no suitcase, no noise. I tucked a silver locket into my coat pocket, the one Ernest gave me in 1973. At 2:17 a.m., I waited by the back kitchen door. Celeste, God bless that girl, slipped me a security badge and whispered, "Don't stop walking, Ms. Bishop." I didn't. The air outside was sharp and alive, smelled like pine and frost. I hadn't breathed like that in months. I looked back once, just once. Then I disappeared into the dark and toward the life they never thought I'd still be brave enough to claim. Cambria welcomed me like an old song I hadn't heard in years, the kind with no chorus, just soft guitar and the hush of waves. My new place wasn't much: 2 rooms and a small garden out back, but it smelled like lemons and salt air, and that was enough. I paid 6 months' rent in advance using the new trust, name listed as Marietta Lourdes, a nod to my grandmother, and to the woman, I was becoming free, silent, and entirely untouchable. Each morning I brewed my own coffee, real beans, not powdered packets, and sat on the porch wrapped in an old quilt. No intercom, no nurses, no clipboard questions, only gulls overhead and the distant clang of boats at the harbor. Meanwhile, Halberd moved like a chess master. He froze access to my retirement accounts, canceled Brendan's emergency signatory rights, and had a real estate agent file notice of legal dispute on the house title. Angela tried to fight it, but documents don't lie, and her signature tied to my forged incapacity report was the crack in their whole foundation. By week 2, I received a voicemail forwarded by Halberd. Angela's voice fraying. "Mom, we didn't mean for it to go this far. Brendan said it was the smart thing to do. Please, just come home." Home. I chuckled. They took that word from me. I'd built it, painted it, filled it with music. Then they tried to sell it like it was some old couch they didn't want anymore. They weren't calling for me. They were calling because the plan was crumbling. Leo called next. I answered. "Grandma," he said, "you okay?" I looked out at the sea. Sunlight bounced off the water like scattered diamonds. "I've never been more okay." He paused. "Mom and Brendan are freaking out. They said the house is unmarketable now." I smiled. "Good." I could hear the hesitation in his breath. Then, "Are you really never coming back?" "No," I said softly. "Some places aren't homes anymore. They're just reminders." He didn't argue. Instead, he said, "They're trying to guilt me too. Say I helped you disappear." "You didn't help me disappear," I told him. "You helped me reappear. Somewhere they can't find me." That afternoon, I walked into the community center. There was a flyer asking for piano volunteers for after-school lessons. I took a tear-off tab and signed up that same day. Teaching again felt like breathing underwater and finding out you still could. The kids were messy and loud and glorious. One little girl with tangled hair told me, "You play like movies feel." It was the highest compliment I'd ever received. On week 4, Halberd called. "The title's cleared. They're backing off. We can either hold the house indefinitely or transfer to your next of kin." "Put it in Leo's name," I said. "But with one clause, Angela and Brendan get nothing. Not now, not ever." "Done," he said. I could hear the pride in his voice, like he'd just watched someone win a quiet war. Later that night, I lit a candle by the window. The flame danced like it had been waiting its whole life for still air. I thought about Ernest, about how he'd have loved this little town, about how proud he'd be to know I didn't let them turn me into a footnote. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't even raise my voice. I just kept moving one paper at a time, one silence at a time, until every thread they'd tried to tie me with became a noose that only choked them. And me, I was already breathing fresh air by the sea, teaching kids how to play the notes that once saved me. 3 weeks after the deed transfer, Leo called again. "Grandma," he said, "they're losing it." Angela had tried to withdraw funds from a frozen account. Brendan was calling every lawyer he knew. Neither could reach me. And legally, they were locked out of the house, out of the money, out of my life. They said they might sue, Leo added. I laughed not out of cruelty, but because some endings write themselves. "Let them," I said. "They're chasing shadows." A few days later, Leo drove up to Blowing Rock. The house stood quiet, now emptied, dust settling like closure. He wandered through each room, pausing in the music room, where my old upright piano still sat under a sheet. He lifted the lid and found the tiny wooden box, the one I'd hidden in the hollowed-out space beneath the keyboard. He opened it. Inside was a notebook tied with red thread, my handwriting on the first page. "For Leo, if you're reading this, it means the plan worked." He sat down on the bench and read every word. The months of silence, the hospital hallways, the cold cups of tea, the panic, the planning, all of it. When he reached the last page, he found a single sentence. "You don't need to fight loud to win. You just need to fight smart." He told me later that he cried, not because I'd left, but because he finally understood why I had to. Angela and Brendan moved out of Charlotte 2 months later, sold their house at a loss, filed quiet bankruptcy. The whispers followed them about the mother they tried to erase. I stayed out of it. I didn't need revenge. I'd already reclaimed what mattered. One morning I received a letter with no return address. I knew the handwriting. Angela's rushed and looped. Inside was just one line. Hope it was worth it. I folded the letter, placed it under a pot of marigolds, and whispered, "It was." Then I made tea, sat on my porch, and watched the ocean breathe, not in regret but in peace. Leo called me last Sunday. "Grandma," he said, "I've got a guest room now. You could come stay. We'd cook, play music, annoy the neighbors." I smiled. "That sounds lovely, baby, but I already have what I came here for, peace." The sun was low that day, the ocean gold and endless. I had a fresh cup of hibiscus tea beside me, and two little girls giggling at my side waiting for their turn to learn, "Twinkle, twinkle." One of them asked Miss Marielle, "Were you ever famous?" I laughed gently. "No, sweetheart. But once I did something very brave." She nodded like she understood, and maybe one day she would. Because this wasn't just about a house or a will. It was about reminding the world that women like me don't fade quietly. We choose where the story ends. And I chose here by the sea with my name, my rhythm, and my power intact. If you enjoyed this story, comment 2 below.